Hey everyone, and welcome back to lesson 3 of the Beginner's Game Dev course. Today we're going to be covering events and interactions, which basically means we're going to be writing some code to make some things explode. What do you think about that, Michelangelo? Okay, cool, that's enough, Michelangelo. Alright, sweet. So I'll show you where we're heading. So what we're going for is something like this. So you notice straight away that when I move the mouse now, the player is pointing towards the mouse, which allows me to point and fire at the enemies. And also notice that the enemy is exploding. So that's what we're trying to achieve in this lesson. And before I show you how, I'm going to introduce some concepts. So of course, event sheets. So event sheets are the code in Construct 3. Like behaviors, they also control objects, but they allow us to do more complex things with objects as well. Code blocks, and a code block is one of these rectangular blocks shown on the right, contain events and actions. For example, in this one, the event is that when the player is outside the layout, and the action is the player will be destroyed. So that's one code block in Construct. Another thing is that the event sheets are running over and over in the background until the game ends. That's called an endless loop, and the loops, how long do they take? They usually take only a few milliseconds, so they're super fast. But each run of one of those loops, so where all of the code in the event sheet is run in a loop, we call that a tick, and that word tick will become important in a second. Just before I move off this slide, I just want to say just something about coding in general. It's like coding is not easy. It can be quite challenging to learn, especially for beginners. So I'll just say that don't worry too much if you don't understand all the concepts straight away. Just be patient with yourselves and trust that the more you repeat this action of creating code, the more you'll come to understand it. And of course, if you want to read more, you can always go ahead and read the Construct docs. There's a really good page on events actually here. And I highly recommend this section, how events work. That explains exactly what's going on. Okay, but we won't get into that now. For now, we're going to go ahead and implement the first feature. So our first feature I wanted to have the player's spaceship basically track the mouse movement, so that when it points towards one of the enemy ships, I can then click and shoot. But I really want the player to just be pointing in the right direction first. Okay, so what I mean by that is, yeah, that's pretty good actually. What I mean by that is, if we look at this cross I've drawn on the screen, and remembering the mouse location is shown down here, X and Y coordinates. So if I move the mouse to that position and it has some coordinates, 737, 718, then I would like the code to tell this player's spacecraft to point in that direction. Before we get into it though, I'm just going to show you a little bit of tidy up. So first thing I'll do is just rename this layout and event sheet. It's good practice to name these files something meaningful. So I'm going to call mine deep space, because that can be like the name of my level, this level in the game. And I will actually just call the event sheet the same thing. Just notice that I've got the first letter of each word capitalized as well. That's called that's called Pascal case in programming. Okay. So let's have a look at the event sheet then. So we remember from last time that we have this test code here where we could press the space bar and then the laser would come out, and that's just so we could see the animation. We could either delete that by pressing delete, or I'm going to show you how to toggle it, so how to disable it. It's kind of like commenting code in a written programming language, which means that when this event sheet runs now, all of that code is going to be ignored, okay? So you can also just delete it, that's totally fine. All right, let's add our first event then. So we're going to add a system event for this one. And here's where that word tick comes in. So I want a system event that happens every time the loop runs. So that's every tick. And inside that event, I want an action. And I want the action to be that the player. I want that action to be that the player would now move and face towards the mouse direction. So I can do this by looking for this thing called set angle towards position. So this is moving the player's rotation. And all I need to do now is say mouse.x and mouse.y. Okay, cool. Oh, I'll take that cross off the screen as well. All right, so now we can go ahead and play test it and see if we have the movement. Yeah, cool. So I can now move the mouse and the player responds, and I can still move the player with the keyboard at the same time. So that's looking pretty good. So this is the challenge. So if you didn't follow it, go ahead and implement your own mouse movement. Sweet. So, all right. But now let's talk about the next feature. So wouldn't it be cool now if while I'm flying the player around and pointing, I can also shoot those lasers out, okay? So in order to do that, so I'll go back to the event sheet and I'll add another event. And this time it will be on the mouse. And I want to use this thing called onClick. So when a mouse button is clicked, when the left mouse button is clicked, then I'll have to add an action to fire the laser out. And interestingly, I'm going to use the player action this time. Why the player? Because I want a laser to be spawned or created at the position of the player. Okay, so if I search for spawn, then I can go spawn another object. Which object? The laser object. Okay, cool. So let's see what happens when I play test this. Right, so if I now press the left mouse button, nothing's happening. And that's because I forgot a couple of crucial details. So if you look here at the laser object and you look at the properties of it, first you'll notice that the bullet behavior is disabled. So if I should probably enable that. But also the reason it's not showing up is because it's initially invisible. So I need to also put that back on. Yeah, so now I've enabled those two things. If I play it again, I should see, well, there's one on screen to start with, but yeah, if I shoot it now, it's being fired from the player. Okay, so yeah, probably a couple of things left to tidy up. All right, so this one that's in the layout to start with, we do need that on in the project because it allows us to change these properties, but we don't want it in the game world, so we'll leave it outside. The other thing is actually it's too big, I think, so I'm going to make it smaller. Hold Control to zoom in, and I'm going to reduce its size to about 30%. Okay, and that makes it look like it's sort of coming from one of those guns. But again, like I said, it can't be in the game to start with, otherwise it just appears when the game first starts. All right, so we'll play it one more time just to check. Yeah, okay, so it's about the right size. Now, to make this a little bit more cool, I guess, I would like the two lasers to be firing from this player, one from each of these sort of side wing things. But in order to do that, I need somewhere to fire it from. So what we do in Construct 3 is we create this thing called an image point, and I can add new ones by right-clicking here and go Add Image Point, and I'll right-click to add a third one. So the first one I'm going to rename by pressing F2. I'm going to call it left. And then I'm just going to click on the left kind of wing turret thing. And then the second one I'll rename it right. And then I'll click on the right turret. So there we have them both. So now I can fire lasers from those positions if I do one more step. So I come back to the code, to the event sheet, and double click on the action to edit it. So you notice this field here of the image point. We need to change that to be left for this one. So I go left, okay, and done. So that will spawn one laser at the left side of the player. If I Control C and then Control V, so I duplicate or copy that and then edit it again, then I can make it so that the other one is spawned on the right side. So if we play it now and fire, yes, two lasers, and they're coming out nice and quick. So that's awesome. All right, cool. Sweet. So I just want to actually, just before we move on, just notice that like things can look cool, but wouldn't sound effects make it even cooler? I think sound effects are often overlooked in games, especially like when a lot of people play on mobile games these days. But sound and music adds so much atmosphere and immersion to a game for the player. It really enhanced the experience. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to add a sound effect for the laser. Okay, and of course, to use a sound effect, we're going to need to go and look one up. So let's try this. So laser sound effect. All right, so I have looked at a bunch of these websites. You can see the purple ones I've already tried. So some of these you actually have to sign up, you have to register to in order to download things, and I don't like doing that. There are a few that don't require you to sign up. So this freesoundeffects.net one is one of them. You can just download things freely. And if we have a look here, I think this is one that I like. Yeah, I like the sound of this one. Just notice that it played sort of 2 shots. So we might need to modify that. And I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. So we can download that one. And I can go ahead and open it. What's happened? When we go ahead and open it, I can play it just to check. Yeah, it definitely fires twice. So if we open it in this program called Audacity, so open with Audacity, then we can edit it. So if you haven't got Audacity already, Audacity is a free open source audio and music editing tool. Okay, so it's really good, and you can actually even record your own sound effects with it. So yeah, if we have that open now, we see straight away there are kind of 2 waveforms here for the sound effect, and we just want one part of it. So what I might do is I will left click and select the part that I like, press space to play it, and I can zoom in a little bit like this. Am I holding? Yeah, so hold shift if you want to scroll along it. I'll move this a bit closer to the start of it, and I'll shift scroll to the other end. I probably don't need it to be that long, so maybe like here. I'll zoom out again and press space to play. Yeah, that looks good to me. So now I just need to trim that out. So I just want that sound only. So you click this trim button or Control T. That trims all the rest out. And zoom out. And now I just need to move it back to the start. So I just drag it like this. Oh, and make sure it starts right at the beginning of 0, okay? Now, last thing I need to do is just export that as an MP3 file. So I'm going to call it Laser Zap. Laser Zap -1. And yeah, that goes into my sounds file folder. Okay, so let's go have a look at that just to make sure that is right. Yep, cool. So just one shot now. So that's what I want to use in my game. Yeah, and another thing. So of course you can also use OpenGameArt for sound effects. That's another place. So if you wanted to look for lasers on OpenGameArt, this is how you would do that. So you would refine your search by unchecking all the things that are not sound effects. And then click search. And then you have more sounds here. Okay, cool. So that's another place you can look. But yeah, so now that we've got the sound, we really want to add it to the game. And sound effects live in this folder called sounds here. So we would need to, we need to first import that file that we downloaded. So we can drag it into here and then press import. And then we can right click to even preview it. Okay, that sounds good. One thing we do need in the game though, before we want to play a sound, is we actually need an audio source. So I need to insert a new object, search for audio, and yes, so just read this here. It says play sound effects and music from the files you've imported. So this is the object we'll use to actually play those sounds later. And just notice that it appears in the object types, but not in the layout again. Okay, just like the keyboard and mouse. Now, if we want to play it, we need to go back to the event sheet and add another action. So on the mouse click again, we're going to add an action to play it. So we add an audio action, we use the play function, and then we have the correct audio file selected. So we just go done, we play it again, and then, yeah. Now it plays every time we shoot. So yeah, of course, it probably sounds a little bit loud for you all, and it is loud for me. I'm going to leave it for now, but I'll show you how to kind of balance the sounds, the volume of sounds, a bit later on once we have more sound in the game. So here's your challenge if you haven't already done it for firing on mouse button. Find your own laser sound effect online. Trim it with Audacity if you need to. Add the mouse on click event and action that spawns the laser object. Use an image point on the player sprite to fire it from a specific spot if you want to, because remember I had 2 lasers. Add an audio object to your project. Import the laser sound to your project. Add another action on the mouse on click event that plays the laser sound, and then test it. Cool, I hope you've had fun with that so far. Now, the next concept we're going to look at are next concepts are conditions and instances. So, what's an instance? Well, in our games, remember we have these objects, and at the moment I've got the in this screen I've got all the red enemy objects selected. Well, an instance is just one copy of that object, right? So of that enemy red object. So this is an instance, this is an instance, and this is an instance. It's just one copy of an object type. What about conditions? If you've done a little bit of programming before, you know conditions as if-else statements. It's exactly the same as what you might have played with in Scratch with block code. But if you haven't, then a condition in code, or in any type of code actually, a condition is just like a question that leads to a decision. So in the real world, a condition might be like, if it's rainy today, then I will wear a jacket. Another condition might be, if it's sunny today, then I will wear a t-shirt. Okay, so it's a condition that leads to a decision. Sorry, it's a question that leads to a decision. And in construct, conditions actually also filter or select an object instance. So what that means is if a red enemy collides with a laser on collision with laser, that's the condition. Then what happens is in the action part, the instance that this happened to is selected, and once that condition is met, then actions will only happen to the selected instance. So as an example, here's the game in action. So there's some lasers flying at this enemy red, right? At this red enemy. And when the laser, so the condition here is when the red enemy collides with a laser. Okay, so that's the condition. And the instance that's selected is going to be this one here. And so that enemy will be destroyed, but not any of the others, because the only instance that is selected by this condition is the one that's hit by that laser. Okay, so come back to the game for a moment. So we'd like the lasers to cause the enemies to explode. All right, first thing we'll do is a bit of tidy up. So we've got some explosions here already. We'll leave one on so we can change properties if we need to. The other explosion, we'll just delete. And I think that's all of them. Yep. Now we need to add that condition to the code. So the condition here is going to be when an enemy red, the event is going to be when an enemy red collides, so C-O-L-L, on collision with another object. When it collides with the laser, then what? Then we want that explosion to happen. So it's like we've done above with the spawning. We're going to add an action on the enemy red. So this is the instance that's selected by that condition. We want to spawn. What? An explosion. Okay, cool. So now when the laser hits the enemy, that specific enemy should have an explosion. Okay, let's see. So I'll shoot some lasers at this guy. There we go, the explosion happened. All right, cool. So looks pretty cool, but yeah, the explosion's now looping, so that's one thing that's not right. Also, the enemy spacecraft isn't destroyed or taken away, so we could fix that. And I think maybe as well, we'll make the lasers destroy as well when they hit the enemy spacecraft. So we'll go ahead and fix that up. So just add a couple more actions. So what was the, no, before we add the actions, we need to stop the explosion looping. So let's open up the explosion and uncheck loop. Okay, that was the first thing. And the second thing was that the enemy doesn't, the enemy should destroy. So let's go enemy destroy. Okay, and the last thing was that the laser should destroy as well. Okay, we'll play test it. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's more like it. And see, one of the lasers is still flying as well, which is perfect. All right, cool. So that went pretty well. So just again, noticing that without a sound effect, the explosion is a little bit strange. So let's add a sound effect as well. So I'll show you one more place where you can get sound effects, and it is itch.io. So if I say itch, game assets, then I can click on top free game assets tagged audio for itch.io. So yeah, so these are audio assets. I might actually go to sound effects tag. So I've got the tags here, sound effects, free, and I might add one more tag here. I might say sci-fi, just so that I don't have to weed through so many. And if I have a look through here, there's a bunch of sound effects. I think this one had some okay ones. You know, have a look for yourselves, but try out some different things. Just when you do download things from itch.io, the free assets, you need to be aware of. It's a little bit tricky. So you click on download, and then it says, "Oh, okay, do you want to donate some money?" Well, you can, but you can also say, "No, thanks. Just take me to downloads," and then click on download. Okay, so this is the content creator's personal itch.io page, and once it's downloaded, you can do the same thing as before. So let's open it up. This one is a zip file this time, so I've already got this one as well. So I'm going to open up the folder that I've already extracted. These are OGG files this time. MP3 is good as well. WAV, not a good file format for games because it's uncompressed. So they're really large file sizes. But so yeah, looking through this package, what have we got? Plop. There's an explosion here. Yeah, so it's got some sound effects that could work as well. So yeah, take your own time to find your own assets, your own sound effect for an explosion. There's plenty more to look at, and yeah, like I said, you try and use those 3 sites to start with because they don't require you to register. They're just easy to use. Cool. Right, me though, I'm going to go ahead and use a sound effect I've already downloaded. So I'm going to go to sounds again, import sounds. I'm going to go to my sound effects folder, and I'm going to drop in enemy explosion. Okay, I'll import it. I'll preview it for you. That's my sound effect. Cool. It's quite a long sound effect, but it doesn't matter. So now I can go ahead and use that sound effect when the laser hits the enemy as well. So I'll add one more action, which is an audio action, and I'm going to play the enemy explosion. Cool. So let's test it all out. I mean, maybe we can do a bit of sound balancing now as well. Okay. So I like the effect, and probably the laser is still quite loud. So I'm going to come back to this audio for the laser and change the volume. And the volume here is in decibels, which is a numbering system we use for sound. And yeah, all you need to know is if you want it to be the sound to be softer, then you go negative, so -10, say. If you want it to be higher, then you go positive, like 10, for example. Play test it, let's see what happens. Yeah, I might tweak it a little bit more. Just do it one more time. Make this maybe like -13. Yeah, That sounds about right to me. I wanted the explosion to be slightly louder than the laser sound. So yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Alrighty. So yeah, that's your enemy explosions. So that's your enemy explosions done. There's your challenge if you haven't already done this. Find an explosion sound of your own online. Import the sound to your project. Add an enemy red on collision with laser event and action that spawns the explosion object. And then add those other actions. One to play the sound, explosion sound. One to destroy the enemy object. And one to destroy the laser object. And yeah, play it once you're all done with it. Play test it and adjust the volumes if you like. See how it feels. So that was the last of the kind of lesson challenges, but I've added a few more challenges to the end of this lesson if you want to stretch yourself and add some more features. So here they are. There's 3 more to do if you want. The first one, player explosions. So this one is about having the player explode when the player runs into an enemy, for example. Or even when the player runs into an obstacle, which is something you might have implemented from the previous lesson. So that's one. Number 2 is bounce lasers off obstacles. So you can, by that, what I mean is when the lasers hit like an asteroid, for example, then they could kind of ricochet and come back at the player or maybe hit another enemy. So yeah, that's again, if you've implemented obstacles from the last lesson, then you could do this. You could also just implement obstacles now. And the last one is alternative fire on right click. So at the moment we're just using the left mouse button to fire lasers, but what if you could use the right mouse button and fire a missile, say, or drop a mine? So this challenge is all about adding new sprites and sound effects and explosions for an alternate or a secondary weapon. Okay. All right, cool. So that should keep you busy for a little while. I hope you're enjoying playing with the games, and we'll catch you next time.